Americans seem to love the convenience and ease of early voting, but as the polls simmer around the nation today, we are left to wonder if this early opportunity is a positive or negative for the system and its impact on the final outcome. Let's welcome to MidPoint Associate Professor of Political Science at the University of Florida in Gainesville and Director of the Election Project, Michael McDonald joins us today. Doctor, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be with you.
Is there any evidence that tells us that early voting has a negative or a positive impact on what happens on the actual election day?
Well, I mean, there's always good sides and bad sides to anything. So we can spin out some good stories and bad stories here. I think on the plus side, the evidence is that early voting has a modest, though not huge, effect on turnout, especially in these midterm and state and local elections. Presidential elections, people figure out how to vote so they can get to their polling places. But in midterm elections and lower elections, especially mail ballot elections where we see higher turnout effects from early voting. Now, the elections are going to be over a longer period of time. And one of the reasons why you'll see greater turnout will be if the campaigns are out mobilizing their voters over that longer period of time. And this is where we can get into some of the negatives, because here now campaigns have to be active with their television advertising, with their voter mobilization contacts over a longer period of time, over the entire early voting period, and that's more costly for the campaigns, and so that's a negative. But I think there's also a positive hidden in there as well, which is that if a campaign is going to release a real stink bomb on the opponent, they can't wait till the weekend before the election to do that. They have to get that information out sooner, and then their opponent gets a chance to respond, and the media gets a chance to adjudicate whether or not that was a fair attack that the campaign had made.
Are we getting an idea then that the people who vote early are more educated or less educated actually about the issues and what they're voting on?
Well, what we see in the early vote is the very first people who vote are, well, and just anybody who votes, is someone who's made up their mind. And so the very first people that vote are people who are very strong partisans. They are people who are very high frequent voters. They vote in every election. They have a very strong attachment to a party. They already know who they're going to vote for. They know their party identification is guiding them in who they're going to support on election day. So they feel comfortable enough to just go ahead and just vote early rather than wait on election day. And what we see is, as we get closer to election day, more people who aren't affiliated with a political party, younger people, more minorities, we see a profile of the electorate shift to be people who are less certain about who they're going to support. But still, these are people who've made up their mind and decide to cast their ballot. So there's some timing here, and still, I think even if you get close to election day, what you've done is you've winnowed down the electorate to still people who could be persuaded. So even though many people have already voted early, you still have a good number of people there at the very end who could be persuaded by campaign messages and change their mind if they so decided to.
I have about 45 seconds left. You believe, after looking at all the numbers, that perhaps the Republican sweep screaming in the headlines is overblown, correct? How so?
It looks pretty close to me. Looking at the early vote numbers and doing some projections off of past history of close elections where we have comparable early vote numbers, what it looks like to me is that this election is going to come down to the wire, which is what the polls are telling us too. So in some ways, I look at the early vote numbers and they confirm the very close election that we're seeing with the polls.
In your own state of Florida, do you have a prediction as far as the governor's race is concerned?
Things have changed so much here. The state adopted a semi-permanent absentee ballot status. We're seeing tremendous usage of mail ballots by Democrats, which is unprecedented. It's upended the numbers. And so right now, I could best say is that Chris kind of likes what he sees here, but there's a lot of uncertainty. So I think it's going to still be a close election. I don't see anything to contradict what we see in the polls.
What will we do without all those political attack ads that have been so much fun over the last few months? Dr. Michael McDonald, University of Florida in Gainesville, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
A reminder, speaking of the elections, don't forget 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Steve Mosberg begins the pregame show, the countdown to the midterms. We're back right here, 8 until midnight Eastern Time. The midterms, all the results as they come in from around the country. We'll continue right here on MidPoint.